guys, pretty much we're at the last step, and I've added the highlights. I feathered them because some of them were a little stark. Now I'm looking at this one and it's bugging me. There we go. That's better. And what we need to do to make these pop even more and go from this to this is we have to add a little bit of cast shadow onto the grout. So it's going to help make the stones look even more three-dimensional. So this is easy. I don't even think you really need a feather on this one. I'm going to use a little bit of black glaze. And this time, this black glaze is going to be just a little bit thicker and a little darker than the first glaze we did. The first glaze on that grout was really thin, watery. This one's going to have a little less water, a little more paint. Just be careful. Don't make it too dark. There you go. And then just kind of maybe test it out in a little corner, see how it looks. You know what? I think that looks fine. So what you want to do is add a little cast shadow on the other side of the stone away from the highlight. And sometimes, I'm going to be honest, when I work for theater and they have a task for me to do, there were specific ways I learned of doing things in college. When I learned how to do stones in college, it was the positive space method like that. And sometimes I don't always have the time or the manpower to do things the traditional way. And so a lot of times I have to kind of make things up as I go from the toolbox of techniques that we've been learning. So the scumbling, the splattering, the dry brushing. We learned how to do bricks. Typically, I would sponge bricks, but I don't always have the time. Sometimes I actually dry brush them, which isn't exactly the traditional way, but it still works just because it adds texture and it cut down on some time. So all of this stuff is a lot of problem solving and figuring out what works for you as you go. And this method of doing the stones in negative space really helped me produce a I'm talking walls of stones. It was a lot. It was like, oh man, here comes another wall. Here you go. So this helped take the pressure off though. Okay, so I'm gonna add, make sure that cast shadow is nice and decent and it pops from the rest of the grout. See, there we go. Okay, now if there's some areas where you feel like you need a little more, like I feel like this stone needs a little more, you can just go ahead and add it. You might want it to let it dry first. If it's still not showing up, you might need to add a little more paint to your glaze. Okay, and then if there's some areas that are kind of bothering you, like this right here, I kind of want to feather that out. So it's kind of like wipe off my brush and just kind of smooth it out a little. And you kind of be the judge. You guys are good artists by now. And you can judge whether it's looking good or not. And I think that's pretty good. Now, what's amazing about this style of making art is up close, sometimes, I think actually up close, this looks really good. But sometimes when it looks a little janky up close, don't worry, because when you're working for a theater, the audience is seeing it. So a lot of times, actually, your eye does most of the trick for you. So it's really about when you lift up and away, and seeing that readability and going, oh yeah, those are some good stones there, yeah. So check your stuff, check your shadows, check your highlights. I might go back and I feel like this guy needs a little more love. He's a little more of a highlight, but I'd say this is looking pretty good. So that's how you do the last step of adding the cast shadows. And good luck doing it on your own. And I think it looks good, and I'm sure yours looks good too. And that's pretty much it. Good luck, have fun.